to run an empire, a conscious empire that's really changing a lot of lives, requires you to really be in your queen energy. And to me, that is healthy integrated masculine, healthy integrated feminine.
Today's guest is Mel Wells. Mel is a best-selling author of the books The Goddess Revolution and Hungry for More, as well as a TEDx speaker, the host of the podcast Love, Sex and Magic, the founder of the Self-Love Summit in London, and an intimacy and embodied leadership coach for women. One of the things I love about Mel that inspired me to invite her into the podcast is that she is such a stand for embracing femininity and infusing the feminine energetics into our businesses. And after having coached hundreds of women myself and having experienced this within my own entrepreneurial journey, I know how easy it is for us women to prioritize the masculine energetics in business and entrepreneurship, because that's what we know and that's what we learn and that's what we see in the world. However, once I really made this feminine way of running business an absolute priority, my entire career, life, relationships transformed. So this is a conversation that gets to be had, and I am especially excited to having had this conversation with Mel Wells. So within this episode, we go into prioritizing pleasure as a businesswoman. Why is that important, and how do we get to make pleasure a priority? Infusing feminine energy into your business and growing your business in feminine flow. Achieving more with more spaciousness, how to connect to your sensuality on a daily basis, the differences between integrated feminine and unintegrated feminine energetics, and how to keep the sexiness in your relationship alive despite of having a really busy life. Both Mel and I shared our personal experiences with these and our tips, and I really do believe that this is an episode that so many women will be getting so much value from. So if you're listening to this and you want to dive deep with us, keep on listening as we go right into it. Mel, thank you so much for making the time to be here with me in Sacred Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, such a pleasure. As I was saying to you before we started this recording, I've been following your work for a while, and I just love the level of embodiment and authenticity that you bring to everything that you do. And the reason why I wanted to bring you into this podcast, I guess there's many reasons, but it was to really speak about this new way of leading and running our businesses in this feminine flow. This is something that I have been personally speaking about and teaching for quite a long time. And I love the way in which you communicate and you articulate those concepts that I know so many women are craving to learn more about. So in your last post, you speak about infusing feminine energy into your business and committing to making pleasure a priority. And I know as someone that used to run a business from a really unbalanced and really misaligned place, because that's just what we do in today's world, and then coming into this deeper layer of embodiment and alignment, I've seen the benefits of doing this are countless, not just for our businesses, but for every single area of our lives. So I would love to start here. How would you describe this feminine flow in business, and what are the benefits of such, in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. So obviously there are masculine and feminine energies in all of us and in the universe, right? So having the feminine flow, by saying like have feminine flow in your business and infuse feminine energy into your business, I'm not saying like abandon the masculine structure and order. We actually need both, but because we've lived in a very imbalanced world that has really prioritized the masculine way of doing things and not really given much room or attention to the feminine, we now need to actually feed the feminine force more, even more than the masculine, I would say, because most of us are out of balance, right? So when I think about bringing the feminine into my business, it really is about prioritizing pleasure. Like we're taught so much to just strive for the goals, hit the numbers, hit those goals at any cost. And what we can do along the way is actually like suck the life and joy out of our business. You know, the feminine really is the beauty, the joy, the movement, the pleasure. So, you know, I really love teaching my clients, you know, what really brings you pleasure in your business? What do you get excited about? Like, let's move towards that. And anything that you are not excited about, you're just doing for the money, or doing because you think you should, or doing because someone else told you to, let's either completely scrap that, or, you know, if it's a little task, outsource it, or just, you know, why is it even in the business altogether, right? Why are we prioritizing something that we're actually not excited about? So that's the first thing I would say, is that actually prioritizing the things that bring us pleasure. Obviously, not everything in our business is always going to bring us pleasure. There's always going to be stuff that we don't enjoy doing, that we have to do anyway. But if we can have pleasure as our roadmap, it means we can infuse it into our day of work, right? So if we are writing sales emails, how can I make this more fun? How can I make this more pleasurable? How can I bring the fun to this? How can I infuse my own sensuality and play into this aspect of my business, instead of just like get my head down, tap for hours and hours and hours and not come up for air? Because that's a really fast way to get to burnout. And a lot of the women that I work with have done things so in the masculine for so long that they are experiencing burnout time and time again. And they're like, I started this business because I love what I do, but I'm starting to now see it as a job, and I'm just a slave to this business. And I don't think that's what people want. You know, we are people. We're running businesses that are based off of our own passions, our own joys, our own thoughts and insights, and things that have inspired and helped us to transform and grow. People want to learn from people who love what they do, not businesses. So that's really at the heart of the way that I'm working with women and helping them infuse more of a feminine energy into their business. And there's obviously more to it. There's being able to receive, there's being attuned to your customers. All of these are feminine qualities. So yeah, these qualities are, they're human qualities, but in women, they are it's at our core of who we are. So it's really just about like reclaiming some of these parts of who we are that we have said to ourselves, this isn't allowed in my business. And I'm saying, yes, it is. And it's not just allowed in your business, it's actually going to make your business thrive.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you have found that for yourself, but I know when I did this transition, I had a past in corporate, and when I started my business, I had this desire to be free as an entrepreneur and do something I was passionate about and something that was about service. But what happened is that without knowing, I carried all of the beliefs that I learned through my journey in corporate, everything that I thought in regards to success, to why hustle was justified and the thing you had to do, why your well-being had to take second priority to everything else. All of these things that I learned around business and how it's done and the things that you have to put up with in order to succeed, quote unquote succeed. I took all of those beliefs that I didn't even know I carried into my entrepreneurial journey. So I started this freedom service journey, but actually I was still being a slave to all of the things I learned in modeled and a paradigm of doing business that was completely outdated. But that lack of awareness kept me stuck in there, right? And when I gained that new awareness and I decided that it was time to start doing things in a more aligned way, a lot of fear came up. Fear of, will I be able to upkeep my success, my revenue, the order in my business, to really have things be organized and work the way they have worked, because I have not seen that be done first before. So I'm curious to know what your journey was like from really coming to whatever you were in business to really making this pleasure and this feminine flow, this embodiment a priority. Because I know a lot of women fear that if they say yes to this feminine flow, they'll lose a lot of impact and momentum in their business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had the exact same fears. And it was actually off the back of a launch that I had done. And I was so used to, at the end of a launch, feeling so wiped that I literally had zero energy. It felt like I had to just lie on the floor and stare at the ceiling for like days to try and recover. And I just didn't know how to look after myself and my business at the same time. So I was used to, okay, if I've got a goal to hit, I'm going to stay up all night. I'm going to just go flat out. I'm going to drink loads of coffee. I'm just going to go, push. And I remember doing this launch, and because I would get so stressed during a launch, what I used to do was actually book myself into a hotel room for the whole launch so that I didn't have to be around any other people because I was like, I do not need people around me right now. I just need to focus on my business, right? So basically, I didn't have a life. I revolved my entire life around the goal of this launch, right? And making sure that I was like showing up as what I thought was my best self. And after this launch, we'd hit all the goals and, well exceeded the goals of how many people that we wanted to bring into this program. And I felt exhausted. And I remember thinking to myself, was that even worth it? Like, sure, like I've hit the goals, but like I don't feel like it. Like, I feel like, what am I going to do now? Just move on to the next launch? And it felt like a little bit fruitless. And I started kind of hearing like a lot more about like the masculine and feminine. This is like several years ago. And I was like, do you know what? Like this, there's got to be a better way. I will not believe, or I choose to not believe that if I want to grow my business to, bigger and bigger, that I just have to keep exhausting myself more and more. There's got to be another way in which it actually flows more and actually feels easier. And so it started just with that belief, like, what if I choose to think something differently? What if I choose to believe that it could flow, that it could feel easy, that I could really give to myself and really take care of myself every step of the way? And so it started with that, like, I believe this could be possible. And then the next step, of course, was just trying it, just going for it. And I had all those same fears as you. I was like, what if I lose all this that I've built? And whenever I have that kind of like, what if, it tends to just encourage me to jump anyway, to just leap into the unknown, because I have really stacked up a lot of evidence in my life that when you do that, the universe catches you and it pays off. And worst case scenario, I thought I could always go back to being the way that I was before, right? So what have I really got to lose? Like, this could be a miracle and it could be a disaster. Either way, I'm going to grow from it. And so that's what I did. I decided to let go of pushing and striving and hustling. And one of the things that I did in the beginning, and I'll never forget, I realized that I was just listening to business podcasts on repeat all day. Like, if I walked to the coffee shop, I had a business podcast. I was listening to a business audiobook. Like, all I did was listen to business, right? Or like personal growth, but mostly business. And I decided to just take a break from podcasts and just listen to music. And as small as that sounds, that literally changed my entire experience of running my business, because instead of just like cramming my ears full of information all the time, I actually would dance through life a lot more, and I would sing through life a lot more, and I rediscovered my love for music, and that got me into my body. Another thing that I challenged myself to do was I realized I had all these books that I had bought, and I didn't give myself any time for reading, right? Because I was always working. And so I decided, how luxurious would it feel if I actually had a reading break in the middle of the day. And that for me was like, whoa, I can't do that. That's so lazy. I can't read a book in the middle of the day. And that part of me that was like daring me to do it was just like, yeah, you can. Yes, you can. You've built this amazing business. Of course, you get to read a book in the middle of the day, for crying out loud. And so I started dancing to my music all the time instead of listening to podcasts. And I started reading my books during the middle of the day. I would just take an hour in the middle of the day and just sit and read. And that was huge for me because it actually gave me permission to slow down, to just sit and be with myself. Obviously, I was reading, so I am doing something, but it was time that I wasn't working on my business when all the noise in my head said that I should. And it really taught me to slow down and savor each day. And what I actually realized in doing that and taking time for myself is I realized I could actually stretch time. I could actually, be the master of time and space. And my days would actually feel stretchier and not like I was just cramming in a million things. So, and, I think what's really important to note here is when you are in a different energy within yourself, you show up in a different energy in your business. I was showing up in an energy of not rested, stressed a lot of the time, and never feeling good enough, and always adding more and more things to my to-do list. So when I'm showing up on a client call or when I'm showing up on Instagram Live, I'm carrying all of that energy with me, right? And we feel energy. I'm not saying that everyone could tell, but of course, we're intuitive beings. Like we can feel other people, right? So when I was able to bring an energy to my business that was well rested, choosing pleasure, giving myself time to just be, and actually being okay with the stillness of that, I think that was felt in my business. I think it's felt by everyone, and it definitely was felt in my relationship too.
Yeah, totally. I think that is one of the biggest things that I did for myself, just committing to always having the first bit of my day, the first few hours of my day for myself to do things that aren't about business and growth and human optimization, but actually just about me having fun, going to do a yoga class or a Pilates class, doing my meditation or journaling, dancing, going to the beach, going for a swim, something that fills me up before I start giving to others and getting into that workflow, and having moments as well where we can pattern interrupt. I love that you say that about the book because that's something that I had so much resistance to, having a break in the middle of the day. And I used to eat my lunch in front of my computer and just feel like I have no time. I want to finish earlier, so I have to just do it. And I remember thinking about or comparing my routine to so many people I knew in the industry that were back then playing quote unquote a bigger game that I was, and they didn't have lunch breaks and they weren't taking time. So I was like, this just can't happen. And it wasn't until I burned out 3 times that I started to look at really what had to shift and what needed to be taken out and what needed to be added into my day to day, so that I not only could be in that space of joy and expansion, but also could be in integrity. Because here I am teaching people how to be um, closer to themselves, how to anchor deeply in their inner truth, how to embody their freedom. And I wasn't doing that. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that, just like you said, I had such a huge amount of resistance to taking a break in the middle of the day because that felt counter, just going against everything I had learned. And it's been one of the most delicious resets for me to just really have that time where I have an hour where I have my lunch and I can go for a beach walk or I can go for a nature walk and do my things before I come back. And energy is felt. Something that you mentioned at the beginning is I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it triggered a question in my mind around healthy integrated feminine versus unintegrated feminine. And what I see with a lot of the women that I coach is that for many women, it's really easy to see that they're really driven by their masculine energetics. or mostly driven by their masculine energetics, and they can identify that there is space for them to really lean into their feminine a lot more. However, I also see women thinking that the feminine embodiment work isn't for them because they're really in their feminine already. What I have learned through going deep into this work and bringing myself into alignment, which is not something that you achieve and then can stay on, but it's an ongoing journey. But through this, I have learned that there is this need to really be in our integrated, healthy energetics, because some women might be really anchored in what they think is their feminine energy. However, they are not able to receive support, receive feedback, receive abundance, receive pleasure, right? So to me, what I have learned in this journey, what it means to be in that healthy, integrated, embodied feminine is to be in a space where we are receiving, we are setting boundaries, we are honoring our sacred yes and our sacred no. We are in a way that it's not what a lot of women may think being in the feminine embodiment looks like. So I would love to hear from you. What has been your experience working with so many women in this feminine embodiment work around the healthy integrated feminine energetics versus what it may look like feminine, let's say on Instagram, and this performative, let's say, feminine energetics that are missing that anchored integration? Does this question make sense to you? I just brought like a lot of things into it.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there with your experience and what is required for a truly integrated and embodied business. It requires both, the healthy masculine, being able to set deadlines, being able to apply yourself, striving for more can be a healthy thing, right? If we are doing it in the right way. There's the healthy feminine. Like you said, like being able to receive, like knowing what your boundaries are is something that comes up a lot with my clients. Having good boundaries is an aspect of the healthy feminine. If you have an unintegrated feminine, your boundaries are all over the place. You're merging with your clients. You're not able to say yes, say no when you mean yes or no. And so that's definitely a big piece. And I believe, for me, that's definitely for me, like as I grow my business, boundaries need to be more and more important because you have less and less time to say yes to everything. And you have to learn to say no. You have to learn to raise your prices. You cannot answer every single DM. And like you said, you have to learn to receive feedback, receive, negative feedback and be able to take that on. And also like really receive being paid well for your work, being paid fairly for your work, like really claiming and receiving, abundance, money for your work. If you are changing lives, you deserve to receive that. And so I see a lot of women, yes, they're in their feminine in a way that they're like flowing through their business and they don't have that much structure going on. But then the sense of worthiness is not there. The sense of like claiming what is rightfully theirs is not there. And that's why I decided to call my mastermind the Queendom. And why I call the women that I work with queens is because I believe to run an empire, a conscious empire that's really changing a lot of lives, requires you to really be in your queen energy. And to me, that is healthy integrated masculine, healthy integrated feminine.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely love that. And I ran a 6-month mastermind called the Embodied Woman. And in a call recently, this came up. There were a few women that were really clear on, I get to lean into the feminine energetics. And then there were a few women saying, well, I kind of think I need to call in my masculine more because I am really anchored in my feminine. But when we unpacked it, what they realized is that to be really in their feminine, in their healthy, integrated feminine, would look like having the space to receive a lot more, receive, like you were saying, abundance and money for the services, but also receive support, delegation, creating a team that really has a workflow that supports them in being in their pleasure, like you were saying. There's so many aspects of that. So this is why I love this conversation, because I know so many women think, well, I just need the masculine energetics, I'm so in my feminine. But really, to be in that integrated feminine energy, we get to open up to those spaces, like you said, not just receiving, but boundaries, honoring our truth, expressing ourselves in those ways. And that's a whole really lengthy conversation that we could go into. But another thing that you mentioned earlier, that caught my attention, was around sensuality, and really being and honoring your, or owning your sensuality. I know that for a lot of my clients, there is a resistance to owning their sensuality for several reasons. One of them being this quote unquote performative sensuality that we can see nowadays portrayed, let's see, on social media or things like that. And I know that a lot of women feel like for them to honor the sensuality, it has to look X way. It has to look this specific certain way, right? And I think that for a lot of women, they are now wanting to really dive deeper into this ownership of themselves. But due to having so many examples of how it may need to look like, and those examples not reflecting what feels true and aligned for them, there is a resistance. So obviously not saying that everyone and anyone doing or expressing their sensual side on social media is doing it from a space of performative action. But I know that there is this difference that can be felt sometimes between these, let's say, again, unhealthy representation of our sexuality, which might be calling for attention, calling for likes, calling for things like that, which can be felt. And then this healthy ownership of our sensuality. For example, when I see you dancing in your bathers on Instagram, I'm like, yes, get it, girl, because I can feel the energy that is coming from is a healthy ownership. I don't feel any aspect of you wanting to be seen looking good in my bikinis online. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I know that for a lot of women, that creates certain resistance, and it pushes them further away from owning that aspect of themselves. So what has your journey been like, and what would you say to support these women to really start owning their sensuality, however that looks like for them?
Yeah, so the first thing that's coming up for sure is the real journey is not about what you're posting on social media, right? Let's just take that out of the conversation entirely, because you don't have to share every single aspect of your life on social media, right? So I think nowadays it's kind of like, if I didn't share it, it didn't happen. No, it did happen because your life is happening away from Instagram, right? And I'm sure like Instagram sees a small percentage of people's lives and what's really going on. So it's not about what you're showing on social media. Your sensuality is not about what you share, what you post, what you write about. For me, I've learned so much about my sensuality through spaciousness. So spaciousness and slowing down, which go hand in hand. So for me, I'm looking at my calendar and I'm going, how can I create as much space in my diary? How can I create as much space and time so that I've got plenty of space every day, maybe not every day, but like as much as possible to just be, to just play, to explore the things that I want to explore. Maybe I want to go to the beach, maybe I want to dance, maybe I want to cook something, maybe I want to paint, maybe I want to self-pleasure, right? How can I create as much space in my calendar so that the important things are getting done and the stuff that's not important is either getting outsourced, being delegated to a team member, or it's not finding space in my diary? Because for me to have that spaciousness feeds my soul in a way that nothing else can. And I've really learned that when I have that spaciousness, when I give that to myself, that's where my sensuality can thrive. That's where it can feel nourished. That's where, you know, if I want to just go and take a nap, I can go and take a nap, right? And that for me is being sensual. That for me is my sensuality. It's not about just like, you know, dancing on Instagram. You know, sure, if I want to, I will show that. If I'm feeling particularly great in my body and, you know, I'm dancing and I want to share that, then I will. But for me, I find my sensuality in the spaciousness, because that's where we find our pleasure. It's in the slowing down. It's in the time to be. The feminine is really about the being, not the doing. So I'm big on, like, you know, if I look at my calendar, there's too much in there. I'm like, something has to change in my business. My business, obviously, there's something that needs to change if I've got back-to-back clients without any time. If I look at my week and I feel overwhelmed, something has to change. I'm obviously not doing it right. So I need to make those adjustments so that I've got plenty of time to be Mel the woman, you know, not just Mel who runs her business.
I love that you say that. I literally had written something here that I wanted to bring up in this conversation around exactly that. The fact that when I personally feel, and since you speak about the importance of prioritizing our pleasure, I know that when I lose a grasp on that, when I don't make that pleasure a priority, it's almost like, in a way, I lose myself. There is Sigrid the coach and Sigrid the teacher, Sigrid the entrepreneur, Sigrid the team manager, Sigrid the maybe the partner, the daughter stays there. She knows how to perform and how to do things and, you know, complete tasks and take action. But Sigrid the woman, Sigrid
Mm-hmm.
the human being, Sigrid the lover, Sigrid the medicine woman
Mm-hmm.
is nowhere to be found when I lose a grasp on my sense of pleasure, because that is my connection to my truth, my connection to my embodiment, where I live not just in my head, where I'm performing all of these things so that I can continue to push the machine, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a space where I connect to source, to my sense of inner truth, to my sense of spaciousness, like you were saying. So I feel that is huge. And for everyone, but especially for us women, there is this inner wisdom that we carry within ourselves, right? And only through having that spaciousness to connect to it can we really find our power and own our power. So I don't know if you felt this, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently that is also a coach. And we were talking about how nowadays it's easy to go Instagram feed and after Instagram feed and almost feel like there's a lot of people that, a lot of feeds that look just the same, a lot of information that sounds like the same. There's this quote after quote, message after message, caption after caption that just sound really similar. And well, she was talking about people copying content and things like that. But I was saying, really, when we are disconnected, and I feel like as a society, most of us women have either encountered that place or are in that place of disconnection from our true truth, from our truth. And from that space, we can't really create things that are unique. We can't create a business that stands out. We can't create a brand that stands out. We can't channel that book. We can't channel that super powerful next program that we'll create, or next membership, or next retreat or event we'll host, right? We can go on and on seeing what the next person is doing and kind of adapting it so that we can have that thing be done as well. But it's only from this space of pleasure and spaciousness that we can really tune into what wants to be birthed through us. And I think that makes a huge difference. When I look at, for example, your work, it's really distinctive. I know it's your work versus someone else's because it is infused with that level of authenticity and that unique blueprint that is yours and nobody else's. And I feel like it's easy for so many of us to forget about that. And myself included. There's times where I go in full go mode, action, action, action. And then I go and sit in ceremony, or I go and take some days off and I remember. And it's all about
Mhm.
that spaciousness once again. The action
Yeah.
is really easy when the connection it's tuned in.
Yeah, well, when you recognize it as a superpower, then it's easy to prioritize it, right? Because you're like, well, I'm coming up to a launch. I need as much spaciousness as possible because I know when I have spaciousness, I'm tapped into my pleasure, I'm tapped into my creativity, I'm tapped into divine inspiration. I know from being in business for however many years it's been now that when I have that, I show up in a much more integrated place, much more inspired, much more creative. When I jump on live, I'm channeling, I'm a clear channel, you know. Whereas if I cram things, if I take on too many clients, if I say yes to too many podcasts, if I'm just do, and I'm about to launch something, I literally, my brain hurts. You know, I've got no fresh inspiration. I can't think of anything that I want to post because my brain's just like, my mind's just all over the place, right? And then when I get on to, let's say, an Instagram Live, I can't think of like the words, they're not coming through me. And so when you realize this and you kind of see it for yourself, then you realize how much of a superpower that spaciousness really is in your life. But at the beginning, if you've not tried it yet, it feels like, well, why would I want to do that? I need to get ahead. I need to do more. I need to, keep going. But once you've actually experienced it, you realize, this is actually a superpower that I need to harness at all times, especially during launches and, big intense periods in my business.
Yeah, totally. Your superpower is being Mel Wells, the same way that my superpower is being Sigrid Tasies. And if we don't have that space, that can't happen. For sure.
Mhm.
I love that superpower
Yeah.
reframe. And
Yeah.
I know that you are in a long, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I know that I'm going to bring a better version of me to my business when I am able to give to all areas of my life. So if I don't have any time in my day to go and give Rick a big cuddle and to just lie with him on the bed for like 10 minutes talking about nothing and just because I want to, if I don't have that, if I don't have the space to go and take myself for lunch or make myself a cup of tea when I really want one because I'm just back to back, then I'm not bringing my best self to my business. And like we said at the start of this, our businesses revolve around us. So we want to the best versions of us we can be is not about them being the most productive. It's about being the most healthy, the most nourished, the most fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, to me, that's where we are really operating from that space of service, right? Because I often say this. What if the end goal of what you're creating was to already be achieved, right? For instance, some women may say their passion and their work is to help all women or as many women as possible to love themselves and accept themselves fully, or to heal their relationship with the bodies, or to whatever it is, right? What if tomorrow we wake up and that is already a reality? There's
Mhm.
nobody else that needs healing. Nobody else needs support with anything. We're all, let's say, an enlightened humanity. We've achieved liberation, and that's it. What happens then? And I always say this, like, really, heaven and hell are both a state of mind. And while the world that we live in is crazy, there is really this realization that I think we all get to, which is you get to be serving not as a form of self-sacrifice and self-punishment, but as a form of really just joyful giving, right? Joyful generosity, if you may. And yeah, if tomorrow you were to wake up and nobody else needed your healing, your support, your help, who would you be then? Because
Mhm.
I know for a fact, and this has been true for me in the past, a lot of people use their businesses to escape and run away from themselves, to to continue to self-punish based on the things that they learned when they were little. So if we learned that we are not enough unless we work really hard, or we are not enough unless we get really good grades, or we are not enough unless we are seen and approved by X, Y, and Z, then we take those traumas, those wounded selves, those parts of our egos that have been unintegrated, and we place them into our businesses and make our business continue to run the same story and be driven by the same story. So this is something that I like to remind myself of, so that I keep myself in check, because ultimately what I'm doing is for my own joy, my own liberation. I always say to all of my clients, I'm not doing this work because I'm such an amazing person, such a generous giver. That's also true. But I am devoted and committed to my own journey of liberation. I want to be free from all the stories that don't serve me. I want to live in the most expanded way. And it so happens that doing that, I learned tools and things that can support others. So happily, I will share that. But it's so easy sometimes to run our businesses forgetting that that is the actual ultimate goal. And the best thing that we can do to contribute to the liberation of others is to be a stand for our own liberation. So if you're a slave to your business, so that quote unquote you can help other people, there is a lack of congruence there. There's something that's just not clicking. So I love that, as somebody that teaches, just like I do, you teach embodied leadership and support women to be in that space. I love that you are in that level of embodiment where you are giving yourself that priority for pleasure and nourishment and joy before you go out there and coach other women on that. It's huge. There is something that I wanted to ask you as well, just like when you said earlier about those 10 minutes cuddling or talking to your partner. As someone that has been in a long-term relationship and also has built a really successful business that has impacted so many women and so many people, what do you find is something that supports you in really shifting from this business mindset or work mode to a space of being present in your relationships so that you can keep that sexiness and that connection alive?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things that's really helped is having completely separate workspaces. So being in completely different rooms. So, obviously we both work from home, and obviously, like with most couples at the moment, they're working from home together. Having that separate space is really important. And for me, like, we spend time together in the morning. We both give to ourselves. So like you, I spend the first 3 hours of my day just in my own morning practice. He is very much in the same. Then we might see each other just for a little moment before we go off to work in different rooms of the house. And then at a certain time every night, we will both close our laptops, and then it's just us time. We don't talk about work. We don't talk about clients. We don't talk about our businesses. We don't talk about any kind of work-oriented stuff at all. That's just me and him, time to connect, to come together. We will like play. We will just like lie around and cuddle and kiss. We might take Rio to the beach. We'll cook dinner. We'll just chill out and watch TV, and go to bed together. So we have really learned those boundaries of like no work in the evening, even if we have like, oh, I really want to do this podcast interview, but like, they live in Australia, so the only time is the evening. It just no, like evenings is our time, and we are really good at upholding that boundary. And yeah, we're just making time for each other. We really prioritize each other and what we need in the relationship for the relationship to thrive. And we treat the relationship as just as important as each of our businesses. I think when you have a business or a mission that feels so aligned with your purpose and you're just so passionate about it, then there's this tendency to I just pour everything into my business, right? And everything else just kind of comes second place. And so for us, it's been really important to, our relationship is It's everything to us. It's so important to us. So if we're not spending enough time nourishing it because we're just slaves to our business, what does that mean? You know, like, what are we even doing this for? You know, we're building these businesses and we're you know, wanting to make these impacts in the world so that we can feel happy, so that we can feel liberated, so that we can feel nourished by life as well. And if our relationship that's at the heart of our life is not being nourished because we're sacrificing it to build our businesses, what's the point? Right? So, you know, we're really big on prioritizing that. We're constantly touching, kissing, playing, flirting, and if that starts to stop, it's usually because one or both of us are in some kind of stressed out space. And if we're stressed, it's a clear indicator that we need to give to ourselves more. So more time in the morning, more time that's, you know, I call it Mel time or Rick time. You know, if he's like a little bit stressed, I'm like, oh babe, you need some Rick time. Go and have some Rick time. You know, if I'm feeling that, I'm like, do you know what? I just need to like have some Mel time, you know. And we know that when we've given to ourselves, we can like show up really present in the relationship. If you're not giving that to yourself, you're just going to bring stressy vibes, passive aggressive vibes, sarcastic vibes, and it's not what anyone wants.
Yeah, totally. And it does happen like this. It transpires into every single area of our lives. And relationship tends to be the first one that notices the heat because well, if you're living with your partner, I know for me, it's the same. If I've had a really stressed day and I haven't prioritized myself, my partner comes home he works from outside of the house. He has his own co-working space because that works better for us. But he comes home and straight away, that will be the first person that pays for the stress and all of that, which is not to say that it's intentional or that it's reactive, but it can be felt regardless of whether there is an argument or just good vibes, but it can be felt definitely. There is just a few more questions that I wanted to ask you. For women listening to this and really wanting to start creating more space, to start leading their businesses from a space of deeper intuition, what would be your number one piece of advice?
Number one piece of advice would be hire an assistant or a team. You know, get people that you love working with to help you with your vision, you know, and start delegating tasks. You know, I used to have this belief that like, oh, no one can no one can do this as good as I can do it, so I may as well just do it all. And it was bad for my health to hold on to that story. And I realized that it was actually limiting me from growing to where I wanted to grow to. And so I've been able to bring in team members that I have a tremendous amount of trust with, and they know what their role is, and they go off and they take initiative in the business, and they come up with ideas, and they, you know, start implementing things that I've said, let's do this. They go off and do it, right? Instead of me needing to get right, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I promise there are incredible people out there. If you cast the net and your application process is good enough, you will find incredible people to join your team. So I would say that's the first one. And make sure that when you've got someone on your team, you're not then just in the manager role of telling people what to do all day long. You want to get people in who are able to think for themselves, able to take initiative, don't need to wait to be told what to do. And you having that degree of trust with them, yes, they might make a few mistakes along the way, but they're actually going to be much more self-empowered, and it's going to create a lot more spaciousness for you. You know, a lot of the clients that I work with, they say to me, well, I've brought on this assistant, but I'm just spending all my time telling her what to do. I'm like, well, you've not brought in the right person, or you're not training her to be self-reliant and empowered in her role. You shouldn't need to tell her what to do every step of the way. You should have standard operating procedures so they know what they're told what to do once. They don't need to keep checking in with you over and over again. So yeah, I would say that's my number one thing for sure.
Yes, that's an absolute game changer. And I know that I have found myself At some point last year, I had this realization that the micromanagement was taking so much of my time because of that, because I had about 8 people in my team, but everyone had to come back for step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3. And it took so much of my time. So I was paying all of these different people to do these different jobs within my business. But at the end of the day, I was managing every single one of them in a way that took so much of my space. So it is definitely something to have in consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, we kind of unconsciously do that so that we still maintain control, because it feels so scary to let go some of that control over our business, especially if we've told ourselves the story of my business is my baby and no one can do it like me. Actually, you know, I hate to break it to you listening, but there's plenty of people that can do a much better job than you at a lot of tasks in your business. And when I really got that, I was like, well, from now on, I'm only going to hire people that are significantly better than me at these things. Yeah, so it's game changing for sure.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you, love, for sharing. And there's 2 more questions I want to ask you. The first being, where can people find you and in what ways can people work with you?
Yeah, you can come and find me on Instagram at I am Mel Wells. In terms of working with me, I have my yearly mastermind called The Queendom, and obviously private one-on-one clients that I work with as well.
Awesome. I'm going to leave all of the links in the show notes as always. And the last question is, in your opinion, what makes a leader sacred?
What makes a leader sacred? I think what makes a leader sacred is their inherent connection to spirit, their inherent connection to the divinity within themselves and the divinity in all beings, and a commitment to walk that path. That's what I would say makes a leader sacred.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, love, for your time, for being here and sharing all of your wisdom and all of your golden nuggets, and for the work that you do. Really appreciate having you in the podcast.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this video and got lots of value from it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for many more value-packed free videos, and share this with anyone in your life who can also get value from it. If you want to get access to all of my free resources and connect, check out the links in the caption. Thank you again, and I will see you on the next video.